We're now live on YouTube. Inspector, good afternoon. We are live on YouTube, and I believe everybody is here for the afternoon session.
Right, so good afternoon. The inquiry is resumed, and I have received the questions from Mr. Macefield. I don't know whether the appellant's aware of those anyway, but I mean, if it might be worth it just while you're giving the evidence in chief, if you just ask Mr. Goodwin, Mr. White, just to cover some of these points that have been raised in these questions. I don't know whether that's the best way rather than me actually asking them. I think that might be the best way. And obviously, if I don't think if I think there's something else I'd like to know in addition, then I'll raise that. But if you can do it that way, it might be the best way. So anything that anyone wants to raise before I hand over to Mr. White and for him to call his witness? No? In that case, Mr. White, if you can call your witness on ecology, please. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Can I introduce Mr. Goodwin to the inquiry, please? Let's go to your qualifications on page 1. Your name is Tim Goodwin, and you have a Bachelor of Science honours degree in Environmental Biology from Leicester University, a Master of Science in Environmental Resources from the University of Salford, and you're a member of the Chartered Institute of Ecology and Environmental Management, and also the Institution of Environmental Sciences, and you had the honour of sitting on the council there between 1993 and 2000.
Yes, that's all correct.
Your professional career started off as a director of RPS Clouston, who were a large environmental consultancy. Prior to that, you worked as a development officer for the Northamptonshire Wildlife Trust, followed by a position with the World Conservation Monitoring Centre in Cambridge, and that was a division of the International Union of Conservation of Nature. You've also carried out consultancy work for the World Wildlife Fund, Greenpeace, the Department of Environment, and Her Majesty's Customs and Excise, and you were retained until 2005 as an independent consultant by the latter two government departments, and you advised on elements of the Wildlife and Countryside Act, the Endangered Species Act, and the Zoo Licensing Act. Not the Zoo Licensing Act.
That's all correct.
Brilliant. In 1992, you formed EPCAD, of which you were one of the principal partners, and you headed the ecology section. In 2004, EPCAD demerged into two companies, and the ecology arm became known then as Ecology Solutions, of which it's remained in the following 18 years, and you're now the managing director.
That's correct.
In addition to your inquiry work, you undertake all sorts of environmental planning work, and you list your various clients there that you have effectively been instructed by. You've also got some considerable experience in dealing with sensitive ecological sites such as Ramsar sites, SACs, SPAs and SSSIs, and also county wildlife sites.
Yes, that's correct.
You have particular experience in habitats regs and the Habitat and Birds Directives, and you've given evidence in a number of high-profile cases where the consideration of the provisions within the regulations have been paramount. And you also say you've advised on biodiversity net gain, and you've given evidence in 2021 on a number of schemes where biodiversity net gain was a key issue in terms of deliverability. And then,
yes, that's correct.
Good. And finally, you give this evidence subject to the requirements of your professional institute, and also you confirm that the opinions expressed within this evidence are my true and professional opinions.
Absolutely.
So could we just confirm at 2.1, just to assist the inspector, the applicant / appellant Waits Developments Limited asked you in October 2020 to do a peer review of the ecological assessment work that had been previously undertaken in relation to the site?
Yes, that's correct.
And then could we please, I want to use your summary and conclusions as the baseline. Could I just ask you to please read from 9.1 to 9.4?
I was first contacted by the appellant, Waits Development Limited, in October 2020 to undertake a peer review exercise of ecological assessment work undertaken for a site previously known as Lander Appledore Road, Tenterden. This assessment work was submitted as part of a prior planning application, which was subsequently refused permission. The ecological information which was sent to me included the ecological impact assessment, the ecological management plan, which was submitted in support of the original planning application, in addition to associated figures and appendices. Additionally, I was also sent draft versions of the biodiversity metric calculation tool, DEFRA 2, which had been modelled for the site, in addition to various correspondence and communication between the applicant and the statutory and non-statutory consultees. As a result of the initial peer review exercise and my walkover of the site, I considered the 2019 proposals were on balance acceptable, but I was asked to advise on how the scheme could be improved. As such, I provided advice to the project team in relation to a revised proposal, taking into account the points raised during the original consultation. Where I felt they had merit, I looked for opportunities to resolve the points raised or to provide further justification and detail in order to directly address the original reason for refusal 6. This resulted in a revised master plan and subsequently a revised planning application being submitted for the scheme during April 2021, now the appeals scheme. Amongst other measures, these revisions included significantly reducing the quantum of built development from up to 250 to now up to 145, increasing areas of green infrastructure, strengthening the links between habitats, retaining the most valuable habitats and ecological features, and revisions to the country park, including the provision of new species-rich habitats and providing a means for long-term management and maintenance of those habitats. These measures were designed in order to specifically address consultation feedback on the original application and to ensure that the appeal scheme was capable of providing a realistic and achievable enhancement to biodiversity in line with the NPPF and the recent Environment Act 2021.
Thank you very much, Mr. Goodwin. Can we now jump? We've dealt with 9.5 as factual, 9.6 sets out the reason of refusal, which we spent some time on this morning. Could I ask you to read, please, 9.7 and 9.8?
When the previous 2019 reason for refusal is considered against the most recent reason for refusal on ecology grounds, two key considerations arise. The first consideration is that at no point does the wording of the refusal state that it is impossible to deliver the enhancements to biodiversity within the site. Neither does it take issue with the ecological baseline. It simply states that the measures proposed would be unlikely to be successful alongside the scale of development. However, there are stark similarities in wording between the previous 2019 reason for refusal and the current reason for refusal. As can be seen, the only tangible difference between them is the replacement of the word quantum with scale. Although these can generally be considered interchangeable, this does raise the question as to whether ABC have actually considered the new application at all, specifically the significant reduction in the number of units being proposed and the increased green space provision. Concentrating on the word scale as set out in the reason for refusal, it must be recognised that the significant reduction in the number of units and in turn generated public pressure or footfall would result in a corresponding significant reduction and dispersal of pressure across the site. As such, the BNG measures being proposed would in fact be far more likely to be successful compared to the previous scheme, and to conclude otherwise would be illogical. This is dealt
Oh. I think it's Mr. Goodwin, isn't it, who's frozen, not me. Nothing to do with me.
You're still with us, sir. It's Mr. Goodwin.
That's a bit unfortunate.
Gone.
Can someone communicate with Mr. Goodwin just to...
Yeah, Inspector, I'll see if I can ask him to rejoin us. Looks like we've lost his connection.
Yes. I mean, I don't know whether it's worth me adjourning to see whether he can sort it out. I'll adjourn for 5 minutes and see whether anything can be done on this.
Inspector, I have sent him the link again, so hopefully it shouldn't be too long.
Yeah, well, I will adjourn for 5 minutes and just to make sure everything's working by the